The first drowning ever written down, the River Ness near Inverness, 565 AD. The grave is already open when the strangers come up from the water. The year is 565, the place is the bank of the River Ness, at the top of the great glen, where the black water of the loch gathers itself and hurries the last few miles to the sea. A knot of Picts stands in the wet grass. They are burying one of their own. The body lies at the lip of the pit, wrapped, and the men who carried it keep their backs to the river while they dig. We know this happened because a monk wrote it down. His name is Adomnan, 9th abbot of Iona, and about a century after the event, he set it in careful Latin in his Life of Columba, Book 2, Chapter 27. It is a book of prophecy and miracle, most of it prayer. But this chapter reads differently. This chapter reads like a report, and it is the oldest thing ever written about the waters of the Ness. 13 centuries before anyone says the word Nessie, a churchman records what the water did to a swimmer. The first record is not a sighting. The first record is a funeral. Columba has come a long way to stand on this bank. He has crossed from Iona and walked the spine of the great glen, heading for the stronghold of Bride, son of Maelchon, king of the Picts, whose fortress stands above the river near what is now Inverness. To get here, he has passed the loch itself. 23 miles of water, stained black with peat, so dark that a white stone vanishes an arm's length down. Deeper than the North Sea, off Urquhart the bottom falls away past 700 feet. And cold, a cold that does not change with the seasons and does not let drowned things rise. The people of the glen already say the loch keeps what it takes. They will still be saying it 14 centuries from now. He asks the diggers what happened. They tell him the dead man was swimming the river. Something took him in midstream. The men of the place went out in a boat and reached for him. And what they brought back on the end of an iron hook. Too late. Adomnan writes that the creature had savaged him with a most savage bite. That is all the description the record allows. Nobody saw more than the water thrashing. Whatever did it did not stay to be looked at. By the time the body came out, the river was smooth again, as if nothing in it had ever moved. Hold the scene as the record gives it. A dead man on the grass, with wounds no animal of the glen could make. A circle of mourners who will not turn their backs to the water. And on the far bank, tied up in the shallows, a small boat, a cobble. Exactly where it is no use to anyone. Columba needs that boat. He means to cross. So he turns to one of his companions and gives an order that has unsettled readers for 1300 years. The companion's name is Luin Mokumin. Adomnan preserves it exactly the way you preserve the name of a witness. Columba looks at him and says, "Swim across. Fetch the cobble." The grave is still open. The dead man is still beside it. His wounds are fresh enough that they are burying him today, now, in front of the man being asked to enter the same water. Luin does not argue. The record says he obeyed without delay. He strips to his tunic. He walks down the bank, past the diggers, past the body, and lets the river take him. The current carries him gently. His arms rise and fall. The mourners have stopped digging. Every face on both banks is turned to the water. The only sound is the river folding around one swimming man. Then the river changes. Adomnan is precise about what happens next. The thing is lying on the bottom. It feels the water stirred above it. Deep water carries the smallest movement downward, the way a web carries the fly's struggle to the spider. It rose once today already. It rises again. The people on the bank see the surface swell where no swell should be. Then the surface breaks. There is a roar, that is the word the Latin gives. A roar out of open water, and a great mouth, and a wake driving straight at the swimmer. The record never describes the body of the thing. No length, no colour, no shape, only the mouth, the noise, and the speed. And everyone who sees it, monk and heathen alike, is struck still with terror. Not one of them moves, not one of them makes a sound. The gap closes to a pole's length. That measure is Adomnan's own, no more than the length of a punt pole between the man and the mouth. And Columba raises his hand. He makes the sign of the cross in the empty air. He speaks into the roar in the name of God. "Go no further. Do not touch the man. Go back at once." Adomnan says the beast fled backward as if hauled away on ropes, as if something deeper than the river had it by the tail and was reeling it home. The surface closes. The wake dies. The water returns to that same flat smoothness the mourners saw an hour before, and now every soul on both banks knows exactly what that smoothness is worth. Lewin swims on. He lays his hand on the cobble, untouched, and rows back across water he now understands. The brethren give thanks. The Picts, who watched every moment of it, glorify the God of the strangers. And the story enters the glen and never leaves. That is the account. Weigh it however you like. Adomnan was not there. He wrote 100 years on from the memories of old monks who had known Columba's companions. Skeptics note fairly that his book is full of wonders. But notice what a wonder story would not bother to invent. The hook, the half-dug grave, the name of the swimmer. Miracles need none of those things. Reports do. And notice the one claim the record never makes. It does not say the beast died. It does not say it was destroyed, or banished, or seen again floating belly up at the Narrows. It says it went back, and back from the river Ness is upstream, through the Narrows at Bona, into the loch itself, into 23 miles of peat-black water that no living eye has ever seen to the bottom. The grave by the river has no marker now. The words have outlived the stone. And on the loch the old habit holds. At Dorez, where the shingle shelves into darkness a few strides out, the locals will tell you the cold is why nobody from the village swims, and the cold is real, 5 degrees in the deep water in any month you choose. But watch them at the shore. Visitors paddle. Locals stand on the stones. Along the south road between Foyers and Boleskine, there are places to stop and look at the water, and looking is all the glen has ever recommended. Because the men of 565 did not give thanks for seeing the creature. They gave thanks because, that one time, with a saint standing on the bank, the water gave the swimmer back. There has not always been a saint standing on the bank. The monster was given its name in 1933. The grave was dug in 565. The water has been patient before, and it is being patient now. The unclosed door of Boleskine. Boleskine House, south shore of Loch Ness, 1900. There is sand on the terrace at Boleskine House, fine river sand, carried up in buckets and raked flat every evening by the young Englishman who owns the place. He rakes it smooth the way a gardener might, then he locks the long north room behind him and goes to his bed. Each morning, before the mist has lifted off the loch, he walks out and reads the sand. That is what it is for. The old book is exact on this point. Spread fine sand before the oratory door, it says, so that you may know by the marks what has come to you in the night. Some mornings the sand is flat, some mornings it is not. It is the spring of the year 1900 on the south shore of Loch Ness. Boleskine House stands on the rise between Foyers and Inverfari Gaig, on General Wade's old military road that runs down the loch side from Dorez. It is a long, low, white house of 1 story built to face north across the water. Below the house lies its graveyard. Below the graveyard lies the loch. And the loch here is not like other water. It is peat black. A hand plunged beneath the surface vanishes at the wrist. Off Boleskine, the bottom falls away past 700 feet, deeper than the North Sea, deep enough to sink a cathedral twice over, and the deep water stays cold all year round, cold enough that what goes down does not come up. The fishermen at Dorez say it plainly. The loch does not give back its dead. It never has. The locals never wanted a house on that ground. Before it was built, in the 1760s, a kirk stood on the site, and the tradition of the parish, told the same in Foyers as in Dorez, is that the kirk caught fire during a service, that the doors would not open, and that the whole congregation burned inside. Whether any record survives or only memory, the ground was reckoned bad. The burying ground below had its own dark name besides, for the parish kept tales of a Boleskine wizard who could make the dead stand up in their rows. Into this, in November 1899, comes the Englishman. He is 24 years old. He pays roughly twice what the house is worth and takes to signing himself Laird of Boleskine, though his name is Alistair Crowley. He has not bought the place for the shooting or the salmon, he has bought it out of a checklist. 2 years earlier, the scholar MacGregor Mathers published his translation of an old grimoire, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Adomnan the Mage, and the book is precise about what its great working requires. An isolated house, a room with a door opening to the north, a terrace beyond that door, a lodge, and fine sand. Boleskine answers point for point, as if it had been standing there waiting. The Adomnan operation is a 6-month ordeal of prayer, fasting and seclusion, and its stated purpose sounds almost holy, the knowledge and conversation of one's own guardian angel. But the book is honest about the price of the light. Before the angel will come, the operator must first call up everything else. The kings and dukes of hell summoned rank by rank to that north-facing door to be mastered, bound and sent away. The sand on the terrace is for their footprints, and the book gives one warning above all others. Once begun, the operation must be finished. Every spirit raised must be dismissed. There is no pausing it. There is no walking away. Crowley begins in the first weeks of 1900. What follows is not folklore. Some of it is written in Crowley's own hand, in the confessions he published years later. Some of it was remembered in foyers for 2 generations. The long room grows dark at midday. Crowley records flatly, the way another man might note the weather, that the lodge filled with half-seen shapes until the lamps had to be lit at noon. The housekeeper leaves without waiting for her wages. A workman on the grounds, a steady man, is found raving and has to be held down before he does murder. The coachman, who has never taken drink in his life, is carried off shaking, and the doctor can find no name for it but the drunkard's horrors. Then it reaches the village. Crowley, settling his account at the foyer's butcher's shop, idly scribbles the names of 2 of the summoned spirits on the bill and hands it across the counter. That afternoon, cutting meat he has cut 10,000 times before, the butcher's hand slips. The men who run in find only what the cleaver left and the sawdust dark on the floor of his own shop. And there is Hugh Gillies, the lodge-keeper, a local man with a family. Within a short span, Gillies buries one of his children. Then he buries another. The parish register records the burials and offers nothing else. The parish did not need it to. In the middle of all this, with the operation half done, and the terrace sand printed night after night, Crowley is called away south on the business of his secret order. And he goes. He locks the oratory, leaves the house to its keeper, and does not finish. Nothing raised is dismissed. Nothing summoned is sent home. The door the book says must be closed is simply left. He admitted it himself, years on, in his memoirs. The demons of the operation, he wrote, had stayed at Boleskine. He said it the way other men say a house has mice. The house has been trying to rid itself of them ever since. In 1965, the retired army major who owned it, Edward Grant, died by his own gun in the room that had been Crowley's bedroom. In the 1970s, a famous rock guitarist bought the house and could seldom bring himself to sleep in it. His friend Malcolm Dent, who kept the place for him and had laughed at the stories on arrival, spent one night listening to something enormous snuffling and thudding against the far side of his bedroom door, and said to the end of his life that whatever walked that corridor was no animal he could put a name to. In December 2015, the house caught fire and burned to a shell. In July 2019, standing empty, it burned again, and that fire was set by human hands. Count the kirk, and the ground beneath Boleskine has now burned 3 times. It has never once burned clean. Walk the South Loch Ness trail today, and you will pass it. White walls slowly rising again inside the scaffolding. Watch the walkers who come up from foyers. Some will not stop at the gates. Some cross to the loch side of the road, to the graveyard, preferring the company of dead they know. And at Dorez, at the far end of that black water, the old ones still say that no fisherman lifts a body from the loch off Boleskine, because the loch off Boleskine offers none. It holds what it is given. It has been given a great deal. The sand is long gone from the terrace now. There is nothing left up there to take a footprint, which is not the same as saying there are no footprints. So if you ever stand at those gates at dusk, with the loch turning black below the graves, remember the one rule that was broken on that terrace in 1900. Finish what you begin, because whatever was left unfinished at Boleskine never left. It is still waiting to be dismissed. The fastest man on water, Urquhart Bay, Loch Ness, 29 September 1952. The water should not be moving. Hold that in your mind. It is the morning of the 29th of September 1952, and Loch Ness lies flat from Dorez to Fort Augustus. Black glass, 22 miles of it, deeper in places than 700 feet, and this morning not a breath of wind to crease it. The men at Temple Pier, below Drumnadrachit, have waited weeks for this. The loch is closed, every launch is counted and moored, and yet, out over the deep water off Urquhart, where the measured mile is marked with buoys, more than one pair of eyes catches a disturbance. A long, low ripple crossing the course. Nothing has passed there, nothing is out there to pass. The ripple travels and fades, and the water is glass again, as if the loch had only turned over in its sleep. Within the hour, John Cobb climbs into the cockpit of Crusader. You should know who this man is, because in 1952, the whole world knows. John Rhodes Cobb, a fur broker from Esher in Surrey. Quiet, enormous, painfully shy, and the fastest human being who has ever lived. 5 years earlier, on the salt flats of Utah, he drove a car at 394 miles an hour. No man alive has gone faster on land. Now he has come north for the last prize left, the water speed record. And of all the water in the world, he has chosen Loch Ness. The boat is called Crusader, and nothing like her has ever floated. 31 feet of silver, birch and aluminium, drawn by Reed Railton, built by Vosper of Portsmouth, with a de Havilland Ghost jet engine at her back. The engine of a fighter aircraft set down on water. All through September, the villagers of Glen Urquhart come to Temple Pier to look at her, and they stay because of him. He learns their names, he drinks their tea, he waves to the children on the shore road. The Highlands do not warm quickly to outsiders, they warm to John Cobb. But the loch does not. For weeks the weather will not have him. Gales come down the Great Glen and stand the water on end. Trials are cut short. The attempt is postponed and postponed again. And in the waiting there are things said, in doores and in foyers, and in the bar at Drumnadrachit, that never reach the engineering reports. That the loch is not a racetrack. That the black water has rules older than any record book. On the far shore, under the dark woods below Boleskine, the old people keep a name for what holds deep water. The Ich Uisge, the water horse, in the loch since before the castle stood at Urquhart. And the water horse, they say, does not forgive speed. One account tells of a local woman who begged him quietly not to go out at all. Every account agrees on this much. The people of the glen loved him, and some of them were afraid for him. The 29th dawns still. By late morning, the loch is calmer than the oldest boatman can remember. Cobb's wife, Vera, barely 2 years married, watches from the pier. Railton is there. The official timekeepers stand at their posts along the mile. Newsreel cameras are running on the shore. Crusader goes onto the water, and the ghost lights with a sound the glen has never heard, a rising, tearing howl that comes back off the hills like the glen answering. He settles the boat. Then he turns onto the measured mile and opens the throttle. What happens next takes less than a minute. Crusader enters the mile faster than any human being has ever traveled on water. The instruments will show an average of 206.89 miles an hour through the measured distance, and for a few seconds, more than that. The silver hull is barely touching the loch. She is skating on spray over 700 feet of black water, and the howl of her engine reaches the shore a full second behind her. Then the watchers see the bow begin to leap. Afterwards, the men of science said she struck disturbed water, ripples on a loch that was glass. Some blamed the dying wash of a support launch, wash that should have faded long before. But there were witnesses on that shore who swore otherwise, and went on swearing it for the rest of their lives. They said a wake crossed the course, moving, a long, low disturbance with nothing at the head of it, cutting the mile at an angle, exactly where Crusader had to pass. The same shape some of them had seen that morning, before the boat ever left the pier. The newsreel film survives. You can watch it today. The boat strikes once and lifts, strikes again, harder. The third time, the nose digs in and the water takes her apart. There is no fire. That is what the watchers remembered. No explosion. A white burst of spray, a sound across the glen like a great door slamming, and then silver pieces settling on flat water. The engine's howl stops as if a hand has closed over it, and the loch goes quiet. That particular quiet. The kind the shore never forgot. The launches reach the wreckage within 2 minutes. They find him floating in his life jacket among the debris, and the men who lift him aboard say afterwards that there is scarcely a mark on him. The doctors record shock. The loch had not needed to break him. It had only needed to shrug. John Cobb was 52 years old. The timekeepers confirmed the figure that same day, 206.89. The first man in history passed 200 miles an hour on water. But a record demands a return run, and Crusader never made one, so the books do not carry his name. The fastest man on water. Officially, it never happened. The Glen mourned him as one of its own. The newspapers of the 30th carried it around the world. It was the people of Glen Urquhart who raised a cairn on the shore above the crash site near Adomnan and cut the inscription in Gaelic, Urim don Treun agus don Iriosal. Honour to the brave and to the humble. It stands today beside the A82 south of Drumna Drochit, facing the water. Travellers stop, locals still slow as they pass, and for years there were boatmen on that shore who would not open a throttle over that stretch of the loch, not for any money, and would not always say why. And the loch kept Crusader. For 50 years it kept her. The mile runs over some of the deepest water in Britain, where the peat-black dark swallows light before 30 feet, far beyond any diver of 1952. Not until 2002 did a sonar survey finally find the wreck, 200 meters down, resting where she fell. They photographed her. They left her there. When the question of raising her was put, the answers were practical. Depth, cost, respect. But sit long enough over a dram in Dorez, and you will hear the other answer. The loch took her fare. And what the loch takes, you do not go and ask for back. No one has ever explained the disturbance on the water. The wash theory has never satisfied everyone who studied the film. The witnesses never withdrew a word. And the old men of the Glen did not argue about it at all. They only said what the Highlands have always said, with the doors shut and the fire low, about deep water, and the things that keep it. The loch does not forgive speed. It only lets you believe it has for exactly 1 measured mile.